Jail, or were you in the military? I was in the military, but I didn't move around because of that. Life led me that way. And I don't know how many of you can say that, because most people, they live, they're born, and live, and they die in the same place.
My name is Robin McCormick. I'm the owner of Quill & Company Publishing, and I help turn ordinary people into extraordinary authors. So I have worked with LeCount Holmes here to help him write and publish his book, and I'm very pleased and very happy and proud of him. He's put in a lot of work. Okay, LeCount, what inspired you to write the book, and why was now the right time to share this story with the world?
It was 2013. My pop, my dad, my father, my mentor, we would hang out together, and in many, many different ways over the years. He died in 2014, and so we were riding along in the car. I was driving, and Pop leaned forward and turned. He said, "Son, you should write a book because your life has been so different from so many. You should write a book." My dad never ever said that. I mean, he gave me all sorts of accolades, but he never said, write a book. 9 years later, it was 2022, Dad is gone. And I had this epiphany. And I said, now's the time. And it was November of 2022, and I called upon one of my favorite people, Bernie, and I knew that Bernie was a good writer, and Lisa. And I said, I don't know how this is going to go, but I must write a book, and I will write a book. But I need your assistance. And so we did a Zoom thing. And the goal, I set the realistic goal for me because I believe in setting goals. And it was for 1 year. And we worked diligently and making sure there was a flow to it. I must say that some of the things that for both of them in writing and us writing my story, they looked at me like that, but it was all good. This is my story. And so it took that amount of time to put together the manuscript. It was, my dad inspired me. And then several months later, the Mother Universe sent me to Robin. I went to a book conference in Crofton. A friend of mine, Patrice, who's somewhere around there, and it was raining, and I said, "What are you doing?" And she's an author of several poetry books, and she said, "I'm at a book conference." I said, "Okay." So I said, "Can I come?" She said, "Of course." So I went over there. It was packed. All of these people, writers and publishers. So I ran around from table to table to table. I said, "My name is LeCount Holmes. I'm an author. I claimed it already. I'm an author." And then, "What's your book about?" "Well, my book is about relationships, transparency, and erotica." And they looked at me and said, "Okay." And I kept on moving. They didn't seem to be connected to that. And then finally, Robin and her sister was at the table, and told Robin the same thing, and Robin said to me, well, I have a book. I said, do you? She said, I've written several books, but one of the books I have is about Christianity and erotica. I said, oh my God, this is real. This is the right person. And the rest is history. For 2 years, we worked on this book, so it's actually took me over 2 years, and close, it would have been 3 years in November. But I say this to all of you, life is a journey. And I've seen so many of my friends die who I knew when I was small. And they said, I've got to put a dent in Mother Universe. I can't leave here and turn around and say, what did I do? So I had to. It wasn't a point of, I'm going to do it. I knew I had to do it.
Okay, talk to me about finding your truth. Tell me what that means to you.
I grew up in a household where it started off, in my household, there was Grandma Jenkins. Grandma Jenkins was born in 1859, born in King George, Virginia. Lived in my life until I graduated from high school. She was 109. She wasn't obese. She drank a lot of water. She walked. Every once in a while, she would wear eyeglasses. Strength, courage. I saw that. To me, she was God in a physical form, my great-grandmother. In my house, there was her daughter, my Nana Rosie, as I called her, strong. She lived to be 95. In my house, it was a mother and a father. I'm a black man in America, not just a mother and a father. In my house, there was, in our first house, I'm naming all the different players. It was my auntie. So I saw all of these generations of people. My mother and father was only 20 years older than myself. My grandmother, my Nana Rosie, was 50 years older than me. My great-grandmother, when I was born, she was 90 years older than me. So I vibed a bit different than a lot of people because I had layers of generations and ideas and thoughts. And I also realized that through my father and mother, that they taught me about freedom, being free to who I am or who I is. I remember when I was in the second grade, it was a white teacher. She was a substitute teacher, Mrs. Garrison. I went to the school in Washington, D.C. on 4th and Decatur Street. It was called Barnard, but we used to call it Barnyard. And so Mrs. Garrison walked out of the room to talk to me. I remember this. This is almost 70 years ago. And walked out of the room to talk to someone. And for those of us who were old enough to remember George Reeves, I thought I was Superman in the second grade. So when she walked out of the room, I got up on the table, unbuttoned my shirt, and showed my chest. My parents didn't recognize it, but as I look back, I was meant to be free. I was meant to open up. I was meant to spread my wings. I was meant to be different. And I remember, and I'll make this real short, when back in the day when we had get-togethers in the community, we used to wear what we call jeans. They were dungarees. And my friends said to me, LeCount, we're not going to dress up. We're not going to dress up. You're going to wear dungarees. I said, okay. I took a shower. I came out with a suit. I've always been different. So I've been spreading my wings all of my life.
Okay, so today we have some people here who purchased your book.
Okay.
They haven't read it yet. They're going to go home and they're going to read it.
Okay.
And then when they put it down, what do you want them to walk away with?
For those of you who are Christians, I want you to pray. For those of you who are not Christians, I want you to pray. For those of you who are not sure of who you is or who you are, I want you to pray. I've had a very different life, and I'm open. And I'm not ashamed of it, obviously, because I wouldn't have written the book. For those of you, it's not all about, my sexual life. It's about my relationships. It's about transparency. It's about my courage. It's about my strength. I remember my father teaching me how to ride my bicycle. I was living on our first house. My grandfather didn't rent it, he bought it. 1809 Riggs Place. I was born in Walter Reed Hospital, and I remember my dad teaching me how to ride a bike. And as soon as we went out in the alley and I was riding the bike and I fell, and I started to cry. My father looked at me, and even though he was shorter than me, his voice was deep, and he said, "Get up and do it again." I never forgot that. I never, ever forgot that. So, with all of that to say, is that in my life, I've learned how to get up and do it again. And that's why, through all of my failures and homelessness, twice in my life, living in different places, I've learned how to get up and do it again. And that's what we all have to do. Yeah. You read the book, some of you might not like it, and that's okay. Some of you will say, look at it and say, damn. Some of you will look at it and read it. I knew I should have did that. But there'll be mixed feelings and emotions. And when I wrote the book, that's what I had in mind. I want to confuse you. I want you to think. I want your heart to feel it. I want you to ask questions about yourself through this book. I am not a one person. I'm a plethora of things. I am LeCount.
So LeCount, you mentioned conversations that you've had with your dad. Mm-hmm. Talk about conversations that you had with him about how to treat women, and what can men and women take away from what you've learned from your father?
My mother and father divorced when I was about 13. I grew up the second house, and I grew up the rest of my life, or a good portion of my life, on 4th and Emerson Street. So mom and dad split when I was 13. Dad rented an apartment with a gentleman, maybe none of you know, but he was very famous in the 60s. His name was Joe Sewell. He was a writer for the Afro. Any of you remember the Afro paper?
Yes.
Well, Mr. Joe Sewell, he was my uncle, and he and my dad became roommates. And so I would either walk, because it wasn't that far, or ride my bike to my father's house. So one day I went to my father's apartment, and my dad looked at me and said, "Son, I'm going to show you something. I'm going to teach you something." I said, "Okay." He said, anytime that you go to a female's house, you always make sure that you seat her to the table. He said that when you do that, and then when she's ready to get up, you stand up and you make sure that she's all right. That was my first role play. It's what me and Pop did. There were times I was a female, so he would seat me at the table. And then he would reverse it, and then I would seat Dad at the table. He said, never go to a female's house for the first time empty-handed. Find out what she likes. Ice cream, roses, flowers, but find out what she likes. And he said, when you're old enough, he said, make sure you give her a bubble bath. And that was my dad. And that was in the early 60s. My father was way ahead of his time. Last but not least, it was a few of my buddies. A couple of them were gone now. And they were over my house. My dad and mother, they were gone. They were separated, but they still interacted. And so many of the parents during those days used to tell their children, this is about the birds and bees. My dad said, this is not about anybody's birds and nobody's bees. He said, this is about life. He said, right here are encyclopedias. And he said, you can read the encyclopedias, but in the meantime, I'm going to tell you the truism of life. And I'm going to share with you about my life. And then you can ask questions. How many fathers, black fathers, did that to their children? My dad did. And they asked questions, Mr. Holmes, da-da-da, Mr. Holmes, da-da. So I know that's where I got that from big LeCount, who stood 5'8", and little LeCount, who's 6'2½". I got that transparency from Dad. And those things that I learned from my father. Shine your shoes, son. Shine your shoes. I took a shower with my dad until I was 6 years old. He parted my hair when I had hair, of course. And I remember we were in the shower, and one day Dad slipped up, and I laughed. And then he said, son, that wasn't funny, not at all. But my father was indeed my mentor in terms of how to treat people. He tipped his hat. He was always dap. He didn't wear a baseball cap and tennis shoes. He was always clean, always.
So, LeCount, you mentioned that you're going to have some pretty detailed information in your book. What do you say to the people who read it and they say, that book is too raw, it's too unfiltered? What do you say to those people?
If it's too raw, put the book down and read it next year. And the reason why I say that, we are all on this thing called a journey. The things that I accept now at 75, I couldn't handle at 25. The things that I deal with and accept at 75, I didn't know at 45. So if you run across something that's a little bit too deep for you, put the book down. And then walk away. And then go back to it a month from now, a year from now, 5 years from now. But rest assured, something in that book will touch each and every one of you. I promise you. I promise you. Yeah.
If your dad were here and he was sitting in the audience right now, staring at you, what would you say to him?
My father, as my great-grandmother, was God in a physical form. He was my mentor, my confidant. He was my brother. I would say to Dad, if you were here, I did what you asked of me. I prayed that I did a great job. Yeah. I grew up, there's a buddy of mine, he said when we were younger, he said, man, you were too emotional. My father was emotional. And that was one of the beautiful things. I could kiss my dad on the forehead. I could kiss my dad on the cheek. And Dad and I would share information. If he was really feeling something, he would cry. And that's why I can do that. Yeah. I realized, thank you, baby. I realized that being a man is when you can expose yourself. Yeah. They say that statistically, black men die soon because they don't know how to express their emotions. They hold it inside. That ain't happening here. So you see that I'm crying. But my father, there were times I held my dad, and it was like he was a child and he was crying about something, and I said, I got you, Dad. I got you. I don't think there's a lot of people, black men, who can say that about their father. And my dad and I hugged each other and did that. And one of the things that he always said to me when we were about to finish our conversation, he said, "I love you, son." I said, "I love you too."
What would you like to say to someone who is thinking about writing a book, but they're not sure if they can do it?
How many of you are old enough to remember Clark Kent? I mentioned that. How many? Let's see your show. Don't be ashamed. Come on. What was his name? You remember his real name? His name was George Reeves. So listen to this. His name was George Reeves. George Reeves. George Reeves. He died in 1958. 1958. That was 6 months ago. I remember I gave a speech. I was living in Atlanta, and I gave a speech at an auditorium, high school auditorium. It was about thousands of people. And I came out, and the Spirit told me to say this: able to leap over tall buildings with one single bound. It's a bird. It's a plane. It's me. It's you. We give so much credit to other people, opposed to giving credit to ourselves. I'm no more different than any one of you. But the difference is that I really believe that I'm able to leap over tall buildings with one single bound. Some people speak it. I spoke it, and I've lived it. And at 75, I know that the window of time isn't going to be the same as it has been. I don't have a lot of time to BS. I'm serious about what I need to do. So when you see that in anything that you can do it. Whether it's being an author of a book, whether it's being a great hand dancer and instructor, which is that young man right there, raise your hand. He's a hand dancer. Yeah. He started off and he got certified and he believed in himself. And he's taught a plethora of people. Many people, when they get my age, they get a big stomach, they get overweight, sit back and look at One Life to Live. Is that still on TV? And so with all of that to say, the only time when you stop is when you choose to cease living. That's the only time you stop. So if a book is what you want to write, do it. If you want to fly, learn how to fly a plane. Do it.
I thought it was awesome. Yeah. I thought it was very well put together, very well planned. They kept everything on track. And the interview I was especially pleased with. I really enjoyed that. I learned a lot of things about LeCount actually that I didn't know. So even knowing him for 40 years, 50 years, you know, and a lot of things just came out things just came back to me from the interview. So it was very good. I enjoyed it. He did an excellent job. Excellent.
Thank you.
And I'm very proud of him.
Gotcha.
I really enjoyed the book signing. I was truly amazed to find out that LeCount wrote a book, and I was like, well, let me go on Amazon and actually see the title of the book. And I saw that I could order it on Amazon. Then I found out he was having a book signing. So I was put it in my calendar on my phone because I was so happy to come. And I'm just really was inspired and engaged in what he had to say about writing the book, the process that it took, as well as I perused through the book. And I'm like looking at some of the titles of chapters. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to read this chapter. I can't wait to read that chapter. So I think everybody needs to get the book.
I think the book sounds good. I like his philosophy, his theory, never give up. Because as he said, that I'm a hand dance instructor, and let me just remind you, that's a shameless plug. And my philosophy is I have 2 rules, right? Never quit anything. That's rule number 1. Rule number 2 is always remember rule number 1.
Dreams come true. It has nothing to do with the color of your skin, It has nothing to do with your agenda, but trust me, I'm living my dream. I want all of you, whatever your dream is, live it.